The waiter at Romano's steakhouse had that practiced smile that said he'd seen everything twice. He was about to see something new. "Another bottle of the Cabernet," Porter Kellor announced, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. My wife Cambria giggled like she was 16 instead of 35, her manicured fingers dancing across his forearm. I sat there watching this performance, nursing my whiskey and calculating how much this dinner was costing me. Porter leaned back in his chair, the kind of guy who wore $1,000 suits and thought they made him bulletproof. "You know what I told Cambria yesterday?" His voice carried that executive confidence that comes from never being told no. I said, "Honey, you need to train your husband better. A good woman deserves a man who knows how to satisfy her completely." The silence at our table stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Cambria's best friend, Eileen, looked like she wanted to crawl under the tablecloth. But my wife? She threw back her head and laughed. "Oh, Porter's terrible," she said, but her eyes were shining. "He says the most inappropriate things. But you know what? He's not wrong. Some men just don't know how to handle a real woman." She looked right at me when she said it. "I'm Darren Halloway, and I fix computers for a living. I've got grease under my fingernails and calluses on my hands from real work. I'm not the kind of guy who looks good in a boardroom or knows which fork to use for the salad. But I know when I'm being played, and I know when someone's trying to humiliate me in public." "That's quite a joke," I said, keeping my voice level. "Almost as funny as a CEO who thinks his company credit card is his personal piggy bank." Porter's smile flickered for just a second. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing at all." I stood up, dropping my napkin on the table. "Just making conversation, like you were." Cambria's face went red. "Darren, sit down. You're embarrassing yourself." "No, sweetheart. I'm embarrassing you. There's a difference." I walked out of Romano's with every eye in the place following me. My phone was buzzing before I reached the parking lot. "Mason's Auto and Tech," my best friend answered on the first ring. "It's starting," I told him. "About time. You coming by the shop?" "Yeah, I need to open the vault." 20 minutes later, I was standing in the back room of my repair shop, staring into a fireproof safe that most people would assume held insurance papers and backup drives. They'd be half right. I pulled out a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse and a USB drive that looked innocent as a communion wafer. The folder was labeled Cambria's Playbook in my own handwriting. "You don't grow up poor and stay married to an ambitious woman for 8 years without learning to pay attention. You don't run a small business in a world full of corporate sharks without developing survival instincts. And you definitely don't let someone make a fool of you in public without having a plan." Mason whistled low when he saw the folder. "How long you been collecting this stuff?" 3 years. Ever since she started working late every Tuesday and Thursday." "What's in there?" I opened the folder and spread the contents across my workbench like I was dealing cards. Bank statements showing mysterious cash withdrawals, printed emails between Cambria and Porter that would make a sailor blush, screenshots of text messages where my wife described our bedroom life in terms that would make a therapist rich. But the real prize was a series of photographs from the company retreat last summer. Porter and Cambria thought they were being discreet at that lakeside resort. They thought wrong. "Holy cow," Mason breathed. "She really did all this?" "And more. See this?" I pointed to a bank statement. "She's been skimming money from our joint account for 6 months. Small amounts, but it adds up. And here..." I pulled out a printed email. "She's been telling Porter about every fight we've had, every private conversation, every embarrassing moment." Mason shook his head. "Why didn't you confront her earlier?" "Because I wanted to be sure, and because I wanted to have enough ammunition to finish this properly." I looked at the evidence spread across the table. "You can't just wound someone like Cambria. You have to make sure they can't get back up." My phone buzzed with a text from my wife. "Where are you? We need to talk." I showed Mason the message. He grinned. "What are you going to tell her?" Nothing tonight. Let her wonder. Let her worry. Tomorrow, we start playing the game. I locked everything back in the safe, except for one item, a recording device smaller than a matchbook. I'd been carrying it for months, waiting for the right moment. Tonight at Romano's, I'd gotten everything I needed. Porter's voice, clear as a church bell. A good woman deserves a man who knows how to satisfy her completely. Cambria's laughter, bright and cruel. Some men just don't know how to handle a real woman. I plugged the device into my computer and made 12 copies of the audio file. Then I created email accounts they'd never trace back to me and started drafting messages to every person who worked at Cambria's marketing firm. The subject line read, "Thought you'd enjoy this conversation from Romano's tonight." But I didn't send them. Not yet. This was chess, not checkers, and you don't open with your queen. My phone rang. Cambria again. "Hello, darling," I answered. "Don't you darling me. What was that stunt you pulled at dinner?" "What stunt? I thought we were all just having fun, making jokes about personal relationships in public. Isn't that what married couples do?" "You know what I mean. That comment about Porter and the company credit card." "Oh, that. Just seemed like the kind of inappropriate comment that fits the conversation. You know, like jokes about bedroom performance." She was quiet for a long moment. "Darren, we need to talk." "We are talking." "In person. Come home. I'm working. Some of us have real jobs that require actual effort." "Don't be childish." "Childish? Like giggling at your boss's jokes about how inadequate your husband is?" Another long pause. "It was just dinner conversation. You're being too sensitive." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally paying attention." I hung up and turned back to Mason. "Phase 1 starts tomorrow morning. You ready for this?" "Brother, I've been ready since the day I met her. What do you need me to do?" "Help me destroy 2 careers without breaking a single law." Mason cracked his knuckles. "Now you're talking my language." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Cambria was already gone when I got home, but she'd left evidence of her displeasure scattered around the house like landmines. My coffee maker was unplugged. My favorite mug was in the sink, unwashed, with what looked like lipstick around the rim. The morning paper was still on the front porch, which meant she'd deliberately ignored it to inconvenience me. These were the petty little power plays she used when she was angry, but didn't want to have a direct confrontation. The kind of passive-aggressive nonsense that had been eating away at our marriage like rust on a car bumper. I made coffee in a different mug and called in sick to work. Not exactly a lie. I was sick of being treated like a fool. My phone buzzed with a text from Eileen. "Are you okay? Last night was awkward." Eileen Patterson had been Cambria's best friend since college, one of those women who lived for drama and gossip, but pretended to be above it all. She was also the weak link in Cambria's armor, because Eileen couldn't keep a secret if her life depended on it. I texted back, "I'm fine, just tired of being the entertainment." Her response came immediately, "Can we talk? I know things you should know." Interesting. Very interesting. We met at a coffee shop across town, the kind of place nobody from Cambria's social circle would ever step into. Eileen looked nervous, fidgeting with her wedding ring and glancing around, like she expected my wife to appear out of nowhere. "I shouldn't be doing this," she started. "Then don't. But if you've got something to say, now's the time." She took a deep breath. "It's been going on for 8 months. Not 3, like you probably think. 8 months. My coffee suddenly tasted like ashes. How do you know?" "Because she tells me everything. She calls me after every encounter and gives me details I never wanted to hear." Eileen's face was flushed with embarrassment. "She thinks it's funny, Darren. She thinks you're clueless." "What else?" "Porter's promised her a promotion, Senior Vice President of Strategic Development. It comes with a corner office and a $50,000 raise." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. But there's a catch. She has to be available for travel. Lots of travel. Overnight trips to meet with clients. Let me guess. Porter travels with her. Every trip. They've already been on 3 together, supposedly scouting new markets. She comes back with stories about 5-star hotels and room service and... Eileen trailed off. And what? And how she's finally with a man who appreciates her. A man who knows how to treat a woman properly. A man who isn't satisfied with a mediocre life. The words hit like physical blows, but I kept my expression neutral. Anything else I should know? She's been taking pictures. Of your house, your financial documents, your business records. She says she needs to know exactly what she's entitled to when she files for divorce. When, not if. She's already talked to a lawyer. Some hotshot downtown who specializes in taking men to the cleaners. Eileen reached across the table and touched my hand. I'm sorry, Darren. I should have told you months ago. Why are you telling me now? She was quiet for a moment, staring into her coffee cup. Because last night was cruel, even for her. Because you don't deserve this. And because... She looked up at me with something that might have been guilt. Because she's been saying things about me too. About my marriage, my husband, my weight. She's not the friend I thought she was. I squeezed her hand. Thank you for telling me. What are you going to do? What any reasonable person would do. I'm going to protect myself. After Eileen left, I sat in my truck for 20 minutes, processing everything she'd told me. 8 months. $50,000 promotion, divorce lawyer, pictures of my financial records. My wife wasn't just having an affair. She was planning a complete life renovation, with me as the demolished building. I drove to the shop and found Mason installing a new hard drive in a customer's laptop. How'd it go? He asked without looking up. Worse than I thought. Better than I hoped. I told him everything Eileen had shared. Mason listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. So what's the plan? He asked when I finished. Phase 1. Information warfare. I'm going to start leaking just enough truth to make people at her company uncomfortable. Such as? I pulled out my phone and showed him the audio file from last night's dinner. This goes to 5 carefully selected people at her firm. Not everyone. That would be too obvious. Just 5 people who can't keep their mouths shut. Who'd you pick? Rachel Martinez in Human Resources. She's already suspicious about Porter's management style. Jennifer Walsh in Accounting. She processes the expense reports for those business trips. Tom Bradley in IT. He's the one who monitors company email and internet usage. Lisa Chen in Marketing. She's been passed over for promotion 3 times while watching less qualified people advance. And David Thompson in Legal. He's paranoid about liability issues. Mason grinned. You've been thinking about this for a while. Like I said, this is chess. You have to think 10 moves ahead. I spent the next hour crafting 5 different emails, each tailored to the recipient's specific concerns and personality. To Rachel in HR, I framed it as a potential workplace harassment issue. To Jennifer in Accounting, I suggested they might want to review recent expense reports for irregularities. To Tom in IT, I mentioned concerns about company equipment being used for personal communications. To Lisa in Marketing, I positioned it as evidence of favoritism in promotions. To David in Legal, I hinted at potential liability exposure from inappropriate workplace relationships. Each email included the audio file from Romano's, but presented it differently depending on the recipient. By the time I was done, I'd created 5 separate narratives that would all lead to the same conclusion. Porter and Cambria were conducting an inappropriate relationship that was affecting the workplace. You're diabolical, Mason said, reading over my shoulder. I'm thorough. There's a difference. I scheduled the emails to send at different times throughout the day, starting at 10 in the morning and ending at 4 in the afternoon. By tomorrow, the entire company would be buzzing with gossip. My phone rang. Cambria. Where are you? She demanded. Your shop says you called in sick, but your truck isn't at home. Running errands. Doctor's appointment. What kind of doctor's appointment? The kind that's none of your business. Don't be ridiculous, Darren. We're married. Your health affects me too. Does it? Because lately it seems like the only thing that affects you is your career advancement. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just making conversation, like at dinner last night. She was quiet for a moment. We need to talk when you get home. Looking forward to it. I hung up and turned to Mason. Phase 2 starts tonight. I'm going to give her a chance to come clean. You think she will? Not a chance. But I want to hear her lie to my face. I want to record every word. And then? Then we move to phase 3, and that's when things get really interesting. I got home at 6:30 to find Cambria in the kitchen, wearing the black dress she knew I liked and cooking my favorite meal. The whole scene was so perfectly orchestrated that I almost applauded. You're late, she said, not turning around from the stove. Traffic. I loosened my tie and sat at the kitchen table, studying her performance. Smells good. Beef stroganoff, the way your mother used to make it. She'd never cooked my mother's recipe before, never even asked for it. But tonight, when she needed something from me, suddenly she was channeling the woman who raised me. What's the occasion? She turned around, and I saw she'd been crying. Not much, just enough to make her eyes look vulnerable and her cheeks slightly flushed. Another calculated move. I owe you an apology, she said, sitting across from me. Last night was inappropriate. Porter was drinking too much, and I should have shut down that conversation immediately. Should have, but didn't. I was embarrassed. When someone makes a joke like that in public, sometimes you just laugh because you don't know what else to do. I nodded like I was considering this explanation. So you weren't actually agreeing with him? Of course not. Darren, you're my husband. I would never intentionally humiliate you. The recording device in my shirt pocket was capturing every word. What about unintentionally? That's not what I meant. What did you mean? She reached across the table and took my hand. Her skin was soft and warm, and for just a moment I remembered why I'd fallen in love with her 12 years ago. I meant that I love you. I meant that Porter was out of line, and I should have defended you instead of laughing. I meant that I'm sorry. Are you? Yes. Sorry enough to be honest with me about other things? Her hand tightened on mine. What other things? Your relationship with Porter. My relationship with Porter is professional. Is it? Of course it is. He's my boss. And that's all? What are you implying, Darren? I pulled my hand away and leaned back in my chair. I'm not implying anything. I'm asking a direct question. Is your relationship with Porter Kellor purely professional? Yes. You've never been alone with him outside of work. We've had business dinners, client meetings. That's part of my job. What about the Marriott downtown, room 412, last Tuesday night? The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. How did you... She caught herself, but it was too late. How did I what? Nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. Room service for 2, champagne and strawberries, charged to the company credit card under the heading Client Entertainment. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Have you been following me? Have you been lying to me? This is insane. You're being paranoid and jealous and what? Accurate? She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I don't have to listen to this. Yes, you do. Because we're married, remember? Because my health affects you too, remember? Because we're supposed to be honest with each other. I am being honest. No, Cambria, you're being careful. There's a difference. I pulled out my phone and played the audio from Romano's. Her voice filled the kitchen, bright and cruel. Some men just don't know how to handle a real woman. She went very still. You recorded us? I recorded a public conversation in a public restaurant. Perfectly legal. You're sick. I'm thorough, just like when I had lunch with Eileen this morning. If she'd been pale before, now she looked like she'd seen a ghost. What did she tell you? Everything. 8 months, not 3. The promotion that comes with travel requirements, the divorce lawyer, the pictures you've been taking of my financial records. Cambria sank back into her chair. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked genuinely defeated. It's not what you think, she said quietly. Then explain it to me. Porter and we connect, intellectually, professionally. He understands my ambitions in a way that you never have. Is that what you call it? It started as friendship, someone to talk to about work, about goals, about the future I want to build. And then it became something more. Finally, a piece of truth in an ocean of lies. How much more? Does it matter? It matters to me. She looked down at her hands. We've been intimate. Not often, but yes. How often? I don't see how that's relevant. How often? Once or twice a month, usually after company events or business trips. For 8 months. Yes. I did the math. 16 times, minimum, probably more. And the promotion? It's real. I've earned it. By sleeping with your boss? By being good at my job. The other thing is separate. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been trading intimacy for career advancement. Her face flushed with anger. Don't you dare judge me. You have no idea what it's like trying to succeed in a male-dominated industry. No idea what I've had to sacrifice to get where I am. Sacrifice? Like your marriage vows? Like my dreams? Like my potential? Like settling for a life that's smaller than what I wanted? The words hung between us like smoke from a house fire. This was the truth she'd been hiding, not just from me, but from herself. She didn't just want Porter. She wanted the life he represented. The power, the prestige, the freedom from ordinary concerns, like mortgage payments and grocery bills. So where does that leave us? I don't know. I do. I stood up and walked to the kitchen counter, where she'd left her purse. It leaves us with choices to make. What are you doing? I opened her purse and pulled out her phone, making sure we're both operating with complete information. Give that back. In a minute. I scrolled through her text messages, reading them aloud. Porter, yesterday at 2:15 p.m. Can't wait to have you all to myself in Chicago next week. Your response, I've already packed something special for you to unwrap. Stop it. Porter, last Friday at 11:30 p.m. Your husband has no idea how lucky he is. Your response, not for much longer. Darren, please. One more. Porter, this morning at 9:45 a.m. Don't let last night upset you. We'll handle the situation together. Your response, he's getting suspicious, but I can manage him. I set the phone on the counter and looked at my wife. Really looked at her, maybe for the first time in years. Manage me? She didn't answer. 8 years of marriage, and you think I'm something to be managed? That's not what I meant. What did you mean? I meant that you wouldn't understand, that you'd react emotionally instead of rationally. Like I'm doing now? Yes. I laughed, and the sound surprised both of us. Cambria, if I were reacting emotionally, we'd be having a very different conversation. What's that supposed to mean? It means that I've known about your affair for 3 months. It means that I've been documenting everything, preparing for exactly this moment. It means that while you were planning to manage me, I was planning to protect myself. Her eyes widened. What have you done? Nothing yet. But tomorrow morning, some very interesting information is going to start circulating around your office. Information about inappropriate workplace relationships, questionable expense reports, and potential liability issues. You wouldn't. I already have. She stared at me in shock. This is blackmail. No, This is consequences. Blackmail would be if I demanded something in exchange for keeping quiet. I'm not keeping quiet, and I'm not demanding anything. What do you want? I want you to understand that actions have repercussions. I want you to experience what it feels like to be humiliated in front of people whose opinions matter to you. I want you to know that the man you thought you could manage has been 10 steps ahead of you from the beginning. She stood up slowly, her face cycling through emotions like a broken traffic light. Anger, fear, calculation, desperation. We can work this out, she said finally. We can go to counseling. We can start over. Can we? Because an hour ago you were lying to my face about everything. 5 minutes ago you were talking about managing me like I'm a problem to be solved. What's changed? I realize I made a mistake. Which mistake? Having the affair or getting caught? She didn't answer, which was an answer in itself. I picked up my keys from the counter. I'm staying at Mason's tonight. Tomorrow we'll see how much you enjoy being the subject of office gossip instead of the source of it. Darren, wait. I stopped at the kitchen door but didn't turn around. This isn't over, she said. No, I agreed. It's just getting started. I woke up on Mason's couch to the sound of my phone buzzing like an angry wasp. 7 missed calls from Cambria, 3 from numbers I didn't recognize, and 1 text message that made me smile. You need to call me immediately. See. Sleep well? Mason asked, handing me a cup of coffee. Like a baby. What time is it? 9:30. Your emails started landing about an hour ago. I checked my anonymous email accounts. All 5 messages had been delivered and opened. Better yet, I was already getting responses. Rachel from HR had forwarded the audio file to her supervisor with a note about potential workplace harassment issues that require immediate investigation. Jennifer from accounting had flagged Porter's recent expense reports for review. Tom from IT had started monitoring company email traffic for inappropriate communications. Lisa from marketing had shared the audio with 3 other passed-over employees, along with her own commentary about the real reason some people get promoted. And David from legal had scheduled an emergency meeting with the company's outside counsel. It's working, I told Mason. What's next? Phase 3, time to turn up the heat. I drove to the office building where Cambria worked, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that always made me feel like I needed a permission slip just to enter the lobby. But today was different. Today I had purpose. I took the elevator to the 15th floor, where Porter's corner office overlooked the city like a throne room. His assistant, a nervous young man named Kevin, tried to stop me. Mr. Kellor is in a meeting, he stammered. No problem, I'll wait. Sir, you can't just... Kevin, right? I'm Darren Halloway, Cambria's husband. I think Porter will want to see me. The color drained from Kevin's face. Apparently, he'd heard the audio file too. Let me check with him. Kevin disappeared into Porter's office. I could hear muffled voices, one of them rising in pitch. A moment later, Kevin emerged looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Mr. Kellor will see you now. Porter's office was exactly what I'd expected. Oversized desk, expensive art, windows that made the rest of the world look small and manageable. Porter himself looked less impressive than usual. His tie was loose, his hair disheveled, and there were stress lines around his eyes that hadn't been there at Romano's. Darren, he said, not getting up from his desk. This is unexpected. Is it? Because from what I hear, you've been expecting this conversation for months. I'm not sure what you mean. Sure you do. You mean the conversation where the husband finds out about the affair and comes to confront the other man? You mean the conversation where everything gets awkward and uncomfortable and people have to make difficult choices? Porter leaned back in his chair, trying to project confidence. I think there's been some misunderstanding. Has there? Because my understanding is that you've been sleeping with my wife for 8 months, while promising her career advancement in exchange for her availability. Is that understanding incorrect? Your wife is a valuable employee. Any promotion she receives will be based on merit. Merit. Interesting word choice. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through Cambria's text messages. Let me read you something. This is from last Tuesday. The things I do for this promotion better be worth it. Does that sound like merit to you? Porter's composure cracked slightly. I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm not playing a game. Games have rules. This is more like natural consequences. I put my phone away and leaned forward. Tell me, Porter, how do you think your board of directors will react when they find out you've been using company resources to conduct an extramarital affair? How do you think they'll feel about those hotel rooms charged to the corporate account? Those expensive dinners labeled as client entertainment? The liability exposure from creating a hostile work environment? You're fishing. Am I? Because I've got bank records, expense reports, email communications, and audio recordings. I've got photographs from the lakeside retreat and witness statements from multiple employees. I've got enough evidence to bury you so deep that you'll need a search party to find your career. Porter stood up abruptly, his mask of corporate calm finally slipping. What do you want? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to experience what it feels like when someone more powerful than you decides to make your life difficult. I want you to know that the man whose wife you've been screwing is not the pushover you thought he was. This is extortion. No, this is information sharing. Extortion would be if I demanded money or favors in exchange for keeping quiet. I'm not keeping quiet, and I'm not demanding anything except that you face the consequences of your choices. My phone buzzed with a text from Cambria. Where are you? We need to talk. I showed Porter the message. Looks like your girlfriend is getting nervous. She's not my girlfriend, mistress, business partner. What would you call a woman who trades intimacy for career advancement? Porter's face went red. You have no right to talk about her that way. I have every right. She's my wife. Or did you forget that part while you were playing house with her in five-star hotels? Your marriage was already over. She told me you two haven't been happy for years. Did she? And you believed that justified everything that followed? People grow apart. It happens. You're right. It does happen. But usually, people have the decency to end one relationship before starting another. Usually, they don't conduct secret relationships in company hotel rooms using corporate expense accounts. Usually, they don't humiliate their spouse in public restaurants while bragging about how impressive they think they are. Porter sat back down, looking older than he had 5 minutes earlier. What happens now? Now you get to find out how it feels to be on the receiving end of office gossip. Now you get to explain to your superiors why your personal life has become a liability to the company. Now you get to watch your reputation crumble while people whisper about your judgment and your character. And Cambria? Cambria gets to learn that choices have prices. She chose to have an affair. She chose to lie to me for 8 months. She chose to plan a divorce without having the courage to ask for one. Now she gets to live with the consequences of those choices. I stood up and walked toward the door. Oh, and Porter? If you're thinking about retaliating against me or trying to spin this as some kind of vendetta by a jealous husband, I should mention that I've documented everything. Every conversation, every threat, every attempt to intimidate or silence me. I've got insurance policies you haven't even thought of yet. This isn't over. You're right, it's just getting started. I left Porter's office and took the elevator down to the 12th floor, where Cambria's cubicle sat in a maze of identical workspaces. She wasn't there, but her computer was still logged in, careless. I spent 5 minutes forwarding key emails to my personal account, including her correspondence with the divorce lawyer and her detailed financial analysis of our marital assets. By the time I was done, I had enough information to protect myself from any legal surprises she might be planning. Darren? I turned around to find Cambria standing behind me, her face pale and her hands shaking. "What are you doing here?" "Just visiting, seeing where my wife works, meeting her colleagues, getting a feel for her professional environment." "You can't be here." "Can I? It's a public building. I'm not trespassing." "You're harassing people." "Am I?" "Because from what I can tell, I'm just having conversations, sharing information, building relationships." She looked around nervously. "People are staring." "Are they? I hadn't noticed." But she was right. Half the floor was watching us with the kind of fascination usually reserved for traffic accidents. I could see people whispering, pointing, pulling out their phones to record what might happen next. "Please," Cambria said quietly, "can we talk somewhere private?" Privacy? That's an interesting concept coming from someone who's been sharing intimate details of our marriage with her lover. Don't do this here. Do what? Have an honest conversation? Express my feelings? Isn't that what you've been telling Porter I never do? Her face crumpled. I never meant for it to happen this way. How did you imagine it unfolding? You'd file for divorce, take half my assets, and disappear into the sunset with your promotion and your new boyfriend? You'd rewrite our history to make me the villain and yourself the victim? You'd tell people I was distant, unambitious, and not enough for you? Stop. Why? Because it's embarrassing? Because people are listening? Because your carefully constructed image is falling apart? Because it's cruel. I stared at her for a long moment. Cruel? Like making jokes about my bedroom performance in front of a restaurant full of people? Like lying to my face for 8 months? Like planning to divorce me without having the courage to ask for one? She didn't answer. Here's what's going to happen, Cambria. You're going to go back to work and pretend everything is normal while your world falls apart around you. You're going to smile and nod while your colleagues whisper about your affair and question your judgment. You're going to sit in meetings with Porter and wonder if everyone knows what you've been doing together. You're going to experience what it feels like to be the subject of gossip instead of the source of it. And then we'll see how much you enjoy the life you've chosen. I walked away, leaving her standing in the middle of her workplace like an island in a sea of staring faces. My phone was buzzing with calls and messages, but I ignored them all. Phase 3 was complete. Time for the final act. The call came at 6 in the morning, 3 days after my visit to Cambria's office. Porter's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "We need to meet." "Do we?" "The board is asking questions. HR is conducting an investigation. Legal is reviewing all my expense reports from the past year." "Sounds stressful." "This has gone far enough, Darren. We need to find a way to resolve this situation." "What kind of resolution did you have in mind?" "A civilized discussion between reasonable adults." I almost laughed. Reasonable adults don't conduct 8-month affairs using company resources. Reasonable adults don't humiliate people in public restaurants. Reasonable adults don't plan divorces behind their spouse's back. "Meet me at Romano's, 1 hour." "Interesting choice of venue." "1 hour, Darren. Come alone." He hung up before I could respond. I called Mason. "You sure about this?" he asked when I explained the situation. "I'm sure it's time to finish what they started." "Want backup?" "No. This is something I need to handle myself." I arrived at Romano's 15 minutes early and chose a table in the center of the dining room, the same spot where this whole mess had begun. Porter showed up exactly on time, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "You look terrible," I told him as he sat down. 3 days of board meetings and HR interviews will do that to a person." "I imagine so." The waiter approached, the same one who'd served us that first night. He recognized us both and looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Just coffee," Porter said. "Black." "Same," I agreed. When the waiter left, Porter leaned forward. "I'll resign." "Will you?" "Effective immediately. I'll take early retirement, forfeit my severance package, and disappear from Cambria's life permanently." In exchange for? Your silence. No more emails, no more evidence sharing, no more surprise visits to the office. I sipped my coffee and studied his face. What makes you think I want your resignation? Because it's what any rational person would want. Revenge, justice, the satisfaction of destroying the man who broke up his marriage. Is that what you did? Broke up my marriage? The situation is complicated. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems pretty simple. You wanted something that belonged to someone else, so you took it. You used your position of power to manipulate a vulnerable employee into an inappropriate relationship. You violated company policy, misused corporate resources, and created a hostile work environment. The only complicated part is figuring out which of those offenses will destroy your career first. Porter's hands were shaking as he reached for his coffee cup. What do you want from me? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to experience what it feels like to lose everything because of poor choices. I want you to know that the man you underestimated has been controlling this entire situation from the beginning. And Cambria? What about her? What happens to her? I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot of an email I'd received that morning. She's been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation. Her promotion has been rescinded. Her access to company systems has been revoked. Porter's face went white. She doesn't deserve this. Doesn't she? She made the same choices you did. She participated in the same deception. Why should she escape the consequences? Because she's not the one in power. I'm her supervisor. The responsibility is mine. How noble. The powerful man protecting the helpless woman from the consequences of her own actions. It's not like that, isn't it? Because that's exactly how you've been treating her from the beginning. Like she's not capable of making her own decisions, bearing her own responsibility, facing her own consequences. Porter stared into his coffee cup. I love her. Do you? Or do you love the idea of her? The excitement of the forbidden relationship? The ego boost of stealing another man's wife? I love her. Then why are you here negotiating with me instead of standing by her side while she faces the investigation? He didn't have an answer for that. Here's what's really going to happen, Porter. You're going to resign, just like you offered. But not because I'm demanding it, and not because you think it will make this go away. You're going to resign because the board is going to fire you anyway, and resignation looks better on your record. How do you know that? Because I know that 3 board members received anonymous packages yesterday, containing detailed documentation of your affair, your misuse of company resources, and your violation of corporate policies. I know that the company's insurance carrier is reviewing potential liability exposure from your creation of a hostile work environment. I know that the SEC is asking questions about your expense reporting practices. Porter's cup clattered against the saucer. The SEC? Turns out that misrepresenting personal expenses as business costs on corporate financial statements is considered securities fraud. Who knew? You're destroying my life. No, Porter. I'm revealing the life you've already built. I'm just making sure everyone can see it clearly. My phone buzzed with a text from Cambria. Please call me. We need to talk. I showed Porter the message. Looks like she wants to negotiate too. What will you tell her? The same thing I'm telling you, that choices have consequences, that actions have prices, that the game she thought she was playing had rules she never understood. I stood up and dropped a 20 on the table. Enjoy your coffee, Porter. It's probably the last peaceful moment you'll have for a while. Wait. I stopped and looked back at him. Why? He asked. Why go to all this trouble? Why not just divorce her and move on? Because moving on would mean accepting that people can treat me like a fool without consequences. It would mean letting you both believe that ordinary people like me are just obstacles to be managed or removed when convenient. It would mean that the next man whose wife you seduce, or the next husband Cambria betrays, would go through the same humiliation I experienced. So this is about other people? No, Porter. This is about me. This is about proving to myself that I'm not the pushover you both thought I was. This is about demonstrating that underestimating someone can be the biggest mistake of your life. I walked out of Romano's for the second time, but this time I wasn't running away. This time I was walking toward something new. My phone rang before I reached my truck. Cambria. Hello, sweetheart. Don't call me that, not after what you've done. What have I done? You've destroyed everything. My job, my reputation, my future. You've turned my colleagues against me and made me a laughingstock. Have I? Or have I simply revealed the truth about choices you made? This is vindictive and cruel. Is it? Because I seem to remember you planning to do something very similar to me. The only difference is that I'm better at it than you are. She was quiet for a long moment. What happens now? Now you get to experience what it feels like to lose everything because of poor judgment. Now you get to explain to your friends and family why your marriage ended. Now you get to start over with nothing but the reputation you've earned. And us? There is no us, Cambria. There hasn't been for 8 months. You just forgot to mention it. We could try again. Counseling, therapy, a fresh start. Could we? Because an hour ago you were calling me vindictive and cruel. Yesterday you were planning to take half my assets in a divorce. Last week you were lying to my face about your affair. What's changed? I realize I made mistakes. Which mistakes? Having the affair, getting caught, or underestimating my ability to fight back? She didn't answer. Here's what's going to happen, Cambria. You're going to find a new job, probably at a lower salary with fewer opportunities. You're going to rebuild your reputation from scratch, assuming you can find people willing to trust you again. You're going to discover that the life you thought you wanted comes with a price you weren't prepared to pay. And you? I'm going to move forward with my life, secure in the knowledge that I'm not the man you thought you married. I'm not passive, I'm not weak, and I'm definitely not someone who can be managed or manipulated. I never thought you were weak. Yes, you did. You both did. That's why you thought you could conduct an 8-month affair without consequences. That's why you thought you could humiliate me in public without retaliation. That's why you thought you could plan a divorce without me finding out. What if I fight back? With what? Your job is gone, your reputation is destroyed, your lover is about to be fired, and your divorce lawyer is going to have a much harder time getting you a favorable settlement now that your affair is public knowledge. I still have friends. Do you? Because Eileen has been feeding me information for 3 months. Because your colleagues are treating you like a cautionary tale. Because the people you thought were allies are distancing themselves from the scandal. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I hate you, she said finally. No, you don't. You hate that I turned out to be smarter than you expected. You hate that your plan failed. You hate that the man you thought you could discard turned out to be the one holding all the cards. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You just haven't accepted it yet. I hung up and stood in the parking lot of Romano's, looking back at the restaurant where this whole story had begun. Through the window, I could see Porter still sitting at our table, staring into his coffee like it held the answers to questions he was afraid to ask. My phone buzzed with a text from Mason. How did it go? I typed back, It's finished. And it was. Not with explosions or dramatic confrontations, but with the quiet satisfaction of knowing that I'd proven something important to myself. I wasn't the man they thought I was. I wasn't someone who could be managed, manipulated, or discarded without consequences. I was Darren Halloway, and I'd just won a war that my opponents never realized they'd started. The sun was setting behind the Dallas skyline, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new possibilities. But tonight, for the first time in 8 months, I felt like myself again. I got in my truck and drove toward whatever came next, leaving the wreckage of their ambitions behind me, like smoke in the rearview mirror.